Hello and welcome to Short Bites, a Stephen King podcast. Today I welcome back Jen from Literary Love, and we will be discussing Stephen King's short story, Children of the Corn. Welcome back, Jen. How are you doing?
I'm doing well to be here right now. Situational and life events notwithstanding. I'm happy to be here to speak with Jason and talk about Stephen King. So I'm always good to have conversations about King.
Yes, King is fun to talk about, isn't he?
He is.
Now, this may be a weird question. We kind of brushed on it before I hit record, but I know that you suffer from the opposite of SAD.
Yeah.
You get depressed during the summer, but feel more alive during the winter, correct?
Yes. And I think that's probably because of where I live, versus where you live. Since I live in South Alabama, which we've actually had for us a cold winter, like lows as low as in the teens Fahrenheit, which is really low for us. But it is a much more pleasant experience for me to have that than heat up in the 90s in the summer with a heat index of like over 100, humidity. So I tend to get more depressed in the summer and come alive in fall and winter.
Yeah, it's I as I said, I'm the opposite. I have SAD, and I'm feeling it right now. How does it affect you? Because for me, all I want to do is sleep. It's insane.
Yes, same here. It's just when it gets so hot and humid and I can't stand to be outside. So I miss that natural element to, everybody needs to be able to get outdoors sometimes and get in the sunshine. But when it's too hot, it's like the sun and the humidity are actually oppressive. So that keeps me indoors where literally all I want to do is lay there with a minimal amount of clothes on and drink a whole lot of water and do nothing else. It makes me very lethargic.
Yeah, I hear you. I feel like that in the winter, but I know what you mean. Like when it gets too hot here, we have some pretty hot summers sometimes. It gets up to like plus 40 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's a good 90, 95 to 100. But sometimes when you're just outside and that heat is surrounding you and then you got the sun bearing down right on the top of your head, it makes me feel kind of sick sometimes. But
yes.
Yeah, but I guess that's normal.
Yes.
But not what you're going through isn't like that's a condition. I'm not trying to say that, what you're going through is normal. I'm just saying sometimes if you're in the heat for too long, it makes you feel sick.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
So what have you been reading lately?
I have, I did my reread of Children of the Corn. It's always just as good to me every time as the first time I read it. He really sticks that landing here.
Yeah.
And then other than that, I am reading a backlist from Tananarive Due. She's one of my favorite authors, but I have not gotten to her African Immortals series. So I'm reading the first one in that right now, My Soul to Keep. And I am also reading a YA story collection, which I do not read a lot of YA, but this one I'm 4 stories in and I'm listening to it on audio and I love it so much that I have ordered a physical copies. I really want to dive into it. And that is A Phoenix First Must Burn, edited by Patrice Caldwell. And the title comes from Octavia E. Butler from her Parable of the Sower series. I think there are 2 in that series, but it comes from the idea that a phoenix first must burn before the phoenix can then rise from the ashes.
Nice. Have you read much of Butler's work?
I have not. I do run the Literary Love Book Club, and our May selection this year is actually Parable of the Sower. So I'm excited to dive into Octavia E. Butler's work. Have you read from her?
No, sadly I have not, but I want to fix that and very soon if possible. But you just mentioned your book club. So what do you got going on at Literary Love with your book club and everything else?
All right, I just am fresh off a live show discussion of Ligeia by Edgar Allan Poe. You can catch that on my channel at Literary Love 123. I just got finished talking about it. Then in March, we're actually going to be reading a couple of romantic poems because my book club is bi-monthly. So we have a reading in January and we have the live show in February, then March and the live show in April and so on. But the two romantic poems are by Percy Shelley and John Keats, and then we'll talk about them in April since that is National Poetry Month, and then May is Parable of the Sower. July is What Hunger by Catherine Dang. September is escaping my mind at the moment. And November is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde.
Sweet. I may have to. I know I'm a part of your Discord,
Mhm.
but I have yet to participate. But some of those sound great. So
Join
uh,
us. Join us.
yeah, I'd love to. All right, so we're going to move into the Stephen King grill here. This is your third time doing it, I
Yeah.
believe. So I'm not too sure if I got like some repeat questions in here, but I hope not. Now, the first question I have is like just well, actually, I think all these ones are fun for the most part. Now, if you were to meet Stephen King, what would you, and you could only discuss one thing with him, what would you like to discuss?
This is probably a little bit on the nose since I wrote my thesis about it, but I would love to talk to him about the intergenerational connection between Beverly Marsh, Carrie White, Jesse Burlingame, and Dolores Claiborne. I know, of course, the very definite connection he has with the eclipse element in the stories of Dolores Claiborne and Jesse Burlingame, but I'd also like to talk to him about why he writes about women at different stages in life and what that means as far as the way that they stand up and fight back against the patriarchy. My mug says Hex the Patriarchy if you can't read it, because I feel like that's a very important discussion to have right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially since the clock seems to be ticking backwards
Yeah,
instead of forwards. Yeah, like that's a good question though. Like Stephen King's representation of women, I think like I can't say for sure because I'm not a woman, but it seems like not all, but a lot of his women feel real to me.
yes,
And then there's like the caricatures, but sometimes you think he just might be going for that. Sometimes,
right.
how do you think
Sometimes I would
Stephen?
like to ask him on the not so positive side, what is all
What
this
he's thinking?
constant
Yeah,
obsession with the description of anatomical parts on women? Like,
yeah,
dude, we could do without that. But as far as the accurate characterization, especially in the characters I mentioned, I feel like he did a strong service to women of different ages there. But yeah,
yeah.
he's not perfect.
No, he's not perfect, but I think he tries, and that's I think the point, right? But sometimes his male gaze sort of
Yeah.
intrudes.
Yes.
All right, here's another fun question. I don't know if I've asked you this, but I kind of came up with it, and I think it's a really fun question. I've got some pretty wild answers to. Which King book do you think would make the best, most ridiculous sitcom if adapted into that form?
That is really funny. Probably what is the one? Is it called Battle? I can't remember. I've read it, and I think it's in his first story collection that we're talking about. But the one
Oh,
where the little soldiers,
Battleground. Yeah,
yeah, that's it, Battleground, where the little soldiers go after the guy. I think that would be really hilarious to see, like Toy Story, but make it scary.
yeah, that would be funny for sure.
Hmm.
Okay, well, maybe I should ask this question after or before that last question because it kind of reflects on what we were talking about in King's writing toolbox. He doesn't always land women very well, but sometimes he does. What skill set from King's writing box do you admire the most?
His characterization, the way that he writes about characters, even side characters, and makes them feel so authentic, so realistic. They feel like somebody you would, have met on the street and know them, somebody you've spent time with. And I know that's one aspect of his writing that some people who don't get along with it complain about. Like they say, we don't need a backstory for every side character,
Yeah.
but that to me just makes everything more realistic and more relatable to actually see. Like, not everybody I know sees like pictures in their heads when they read, but when I read, especially stories that are written well, I get like this mini movie playing in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way he goes not only into appearance, but also what that person was doing 5 years ago, and what part of the town they make up. And
Yeah.
that's one of the aspects that I will never get tired of reading in his books.
I absolutely agree. That's one of my favorites as well. And it's funny that it's yours because my wife, who coincidentally has the same name as you, Jen, she's read some Stephen King books because of me. I didn't force her; she was just curious, and that's her biggest complaint. She's like, "Why does he go on and on about this stuff when I just want to get to the story?" And I'm like, "Because that's like you're getting to know these people, you're
Mm-hmm.
identifying with them, right?" And she just doesn't like it, but that's fine.
Yeah, it's a valid point. People have
Yeah, I
different
mean, it is
ways.
meandering, right? But that's sort of a literary tool, is it not? I mean, he's
Mm-hmm.
character focused, not plot focused. So
Yes.
so there's that point. But if you don't like it, you don't like it. You can't do anything about it.
Yep.
All right, final King Grill question here. If you could live in any of his fictional towns, like Castle Rock, Derry, Jerusalem's Lot, which would you choose?
Ooh, that's a little bit scary.
It is, yeah, yeah.
But I would like to live in Castle Rock. Isn't that where Carrie is? I should know this.
I can't remember, but yeah, maybe. You know what? And Castle Rock never really gets destroyed, so
Right.
maybe that would be the best
Well, it
one.
might not be there because she destroys the whole town. But
Oh
I think
yeah,
I would like to live where Carrie is because I would like to stand beside Carrie and demolish all of those abusers and
hmm,
just destroy the whole town, because even those who did not directly abuse her, they indirectly did, or they knew about everything that was happening in her home and at school and they did nothing about it. So
yeah,
I would like to burn it all down. This
yeah,
might be related to real life feelings I'm having right now about systems and things, but we won't
yeah.
get into that. But I would like to just burn it all down.
Yeah, I totally get what you're going, and I'll just add it right here. Fuck ice,
Thank you. Absolutely. Yes.
and fuck everyone who supports them. And I'm
Yeah.
not sorry if you're listening to this and you support them. You can go away. I don't want people like that listening to this podcast.
Same
So,
here. Not
so
welcome.
yeah, you don't need to hide if you don't want to from that. I'm very outspoken about this stuff, and I'm small, so it probably hurts me, but
You know
I don't
what?
really
That's
care.
how I feel. I'm like you. I don't want, if somebody supports any of that, then I don't really want them in my space.
Yeah, I mean, there's no room for it anymore. Not now. All right, so we're here. We made it to the Children of the Corn. Children of the Corn. You know that's a corn song. No, yeah, I think a corn song did that where they're like children of the corn, children of the corn. I'm uh I'm having brain farts here, don't mind me.
That's okay.
All right. So publication history. It was first published in Penthouse magazine, so I think this was like his first really big, well, maybe not first, but this was a good paycheck for him. March 1977 was when it was published in Penthouse, and it was collected in Night Shift, which is what we're working through, which is Stephen King's first short story collection. And also some interesting notes here. This was written during King's early Hungry phase, pre-Shining fame, and part of a wave of stories where King was experimenting with bleak endings and moral ambiguity, and that shows in here. It's been adapted a couple of times, actually. The first film uh, in 1984, and followed by a long, messy franchise. But there's also a Dollar Baby. I don't know if you can find. I should have looked before coming on here, but there's a short one. It's like a half hour long, and it's more dark and more cynical than the other adaptations. Have you seen the movie?
I've seen the OG with Linda Hamilton, and
Yeah,
I forgot the guy's name. I can see his face, but I've seen that one. I at some point saw part of, I believe, the second and part of, I believe, the third
Hmm.
Children of the Corn, but obviously I didn't care about them because I didn't finish either one of
They're
them.
bad, yeah.
And I did not watch the remake that came out a few years ago. I
No,
don't
neither
know if
have
I
I
will.
actually.
Maybe I will. Did you watch it?
No, I haven't. But honestly, I'm gonna make a confession here. Children of the Corn is not my favorite Stephen King thing. I don't hate it, but well, okay, I don't like the movie. I'm not very fond of. I don't hate it, but I did hate it at one point, and that's recent too. I remember me and my wife were watching it about a year ago. She wanted to watch it, and I just hate watched it through the whole thing. I don't know why, but then we watched it again last night just so I could get a refresher of it, and I didn't hate it. I actually enjoyed it. So I don't know what's going on with me or my brain, but it sometimes, I guess, gets into a bad mood.
You have different responses at different times.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, like, I've been watching horror since I was a kid, but the first few times, I think I was, I don't know, maybe 12, 13, 14, something like that. The first few times I tried to watch Children of the Corn, it unnerved me and scared me so much I could not get very far into it. Like, I stopped watching it at the restaurant scene when
Yeah.
they get ready to get rid of all the adults. There was just something that unnerved me about that. The quoting of like scripture and that. I was like, I can't do it.
I just can't
But
do it. Yeah.
now I've watched it like a whole bunch of times, and it is a movie I like. It is definitely not a perfect movie. It's definitely very cheesy in a lot of ways, but I do like the movie, but I like the story better because I feel
Yeah.
like the ending of the story is more accurately what would have happened.
Yeah. The end. The funny thing about the ending, um, is that in the movie, it's a little over the top, but neither ending show what exactly is going on.
Right.
But like you get a bigger idea, I guess, with the movie because you have like the ground shifting. Does that happen in the short story? I've read it like three times, but I can't remember. You get
Um,
like this weird tunneling effect happening in the earth.
well, I don't think so. I know there's like the rustling of the corn, and then the
Yeah,
thing that he who walks behind the rose. But I don't
yeah,
think there's as much about the ground moving.
yeah. I don't think so. I didn't think so either. But for some reason, I was just like brain farting again, going, "Is it in there? It might be in there." It's like I have this issue. I can't consume the movie and the book at relatively the same time because both will, unless they're completely different from each other,
Yeah.
they will start to mesh in my mind. So
Mhm.
that's a problem for me. All
Me.
right, so we'll get to the ending again. I just want to give a brief synopsis here. Children of the Corn is about Bert and Vicky. They're a married couple who are experiencing some issues with their marriage. I believe they're moving to another state to start Bert's career. They're taking the back roads to get there because they want to check out the countryside, which here in Nebraska is full of cornfields. So while bickering at each other, Bert accidentally hits a kid, but they quickly learn that the kid was already dead when they hit him. His throat had been slit, and recently. They put the kid in the trunk to take him to the authorities, and they end up looking for someone in the town of Gatlin, which is a mistake because it appears to have been abandoned, but there are people there, the children of the corn. And morning, as we kind of alluded to already, we will spoil this story, but I have provided in the links, excuse me, a really awesome reading of Children of the Corn by, her name is Jen too, actually.
We're everywhere.
Yeah, and she works at a library, and it's the library's YouTube channel, and it's a really good. It's one of the best readings of this short story I've seen. So definitely check that out. All right, so do you remember the first time you read this and what your first impression was?
I actually read it for the first time as an adult, and my first impression was, wow, that ending is a lot bleaker than the movie, and I liked it. I think the movie's creepy. I mean, not as much so now as an adult, but
Mm-hmm.
the story is really creepy, and also it leans so much more into the folk horror element. I mean, you get a bit of that in the movie, but I feel like you get a lot more folk horror in the story than you do in the movie.
Absolutely, yeah. The story itself is, for some reason, it's a lot longer than I thought it was when I went to reread it this time. Like I said, I read it 2 or 3 times. The first time I was like, geez, this is like 50, 60 pages. What the, what the heck have I got myself into here? But I guess, the movie does kind of follow it quite fairly closely anyway, which is interesting. Which goes to show that short stories often make for the best adaptations, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because you can follow it fairly closely. But they do make some changes, which didn't have to happen. Uh, the short story itself, as I mentioned, stars Vicky and Bert, who are a married couple, and as I mentioned, their marriage is failing. What do you think of these two?
I hate Bert.
Yeah,
No, I mean, first of all, like we do get his internal thoughts where one of the first things we hear him thinking is he wants to like punch his wife, and so immediately that's like a no from me, dude.
hmm
And she's by no means perfect, but if we're thinking about her warning him and saying we need to leave, we need to leave, we need to leave, and he keeps blowing her off, I just am screaming, why don't you listen to your wife? Why don't you listen to women? What are you doing? But I would never excuse him thinking that, and he actually does slap her at one point, which I
yeah,
I didn't like. But is that like one of those? Not that I'm saying it's necessarily okay, but like a slap when somebody's panicking. I don't know, trying to
yeah.
settle her
I
down.
actually, I
But
actually had a question about that because it's just random. He just randomly slaps her across the face.
yeah,
But the interesting thing is she barely reacts to it. It's almost as
yeah,
though this happens a lot. Like,
yeah,
oh, he just hit me again, right?
right,
But this is also something that King does in these older short stories. The misogyny and the violence against women is pretty strong in almost any type of story like this. And I have to wonder, do you think maybe he was, because he was selling to the adults magazines? Do you think maybe this is why he did that, to appeal to that audience, or do you think
could have
that,
been
or do you think this was just something from that time that was more acceptable to write like that? Because he's not like that now at all.
right.
He's much more kinder towards men and women in relationships. If there is abuse going on, there's a purpose for it. It's part of the story. It's not just an aside.
Yeah, I have to think he was somewhat too, like you said, catering to the audience, especially considering where it was published. And I think too, just sometimes it could have also been, if I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, a way to let the reader know, hey, this is not a good person. This is not a good character.
Yeah,
Because a lot of times he does make the characters you're not really supposed to like as much be misogynistic or racist or homophobic,
yeah.
in very overt ways that he really didn't have to do. So I wonder if it could be a combination of all of those.
It's an interesting contrast, like from his later works, though, because he would use that type of stuff, or those like that. I've called it, that's part of his toolbox. If he wants you to know that if you're reading about a bad guy here, he's going to kick a dog or slap a woman.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But in these early stories, it's the protagonists who are doing
Yeah.
this type of stuff, like the heroes. So it 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 confuses me, because wouldn't this story be more effective if we actually liked the main characters because of what happens to them? Like we're caring about them. We don't want bad things to happen to them,
Right.
but bad things are going to happen. But instead, we're kind of cheering it on a little bit because they're especially Bert are they're kind of jerks, right?
Yes. I feel more for Vicky, like more compassion. Like I don't know, I didn't want her to get got by the kids, but I was
No.
partially cheering when Bert got his because he
Yeah.
didn't listen when she tried to tell him we need to go, something's wrong. I mean, everything is screaming at him. Everything is old. There's nobody there.
Yeah.
What are you what are you doing? You found a kid in the road who was run over, but then you realize his throat had already been slashed. Like, get out of there. Just get out.
Yeah. But he doesn't listen. You're right, and
No.
that's a very male trait. You know what? I was thinking about this with other authors. He might just be spilling like truth. Like this is the way people act towards each other. Uh, and instead of making you like them or dislike them, he's just because Stephen King, if you read on writing, he's big about the truth, like
Mm-hmm.
writing characters who are real rather than caricatures of or trying to make them likable or whatnot. So maybe that's the point. I don't know. But it bothered me this time around because, like, reading these short stories and the slapping of women across the face, like, it gets to me, and I'm like, why are we reading this?
Right.
Like, why is this in here when they're the good guy, right?
Right.
Uh,
And then I
yeah,
try to give them a little grace, not for the slapping, but the way they act to each other, because their marriage, like you said, is falling apart. So they've got all of these resentful feelings towards each other.
yeah,
So you don't really want to take a road trip with your significant other if you're having issues. That
yeah,
can be an invitation to much worse trouble.
yeah. Yeah, I hear you on that. I mean, it's like they're taking all the wrong choices and fixing
Yes.
a marriage here. Now, what did you think of that scene though? When he runs over the kid, that's a pretty intense scene. I had forgotten about that, and I forgot it was in the movie too. But so it kind of surprised me on the second time around.
Yeah, it is. It's horrifying to think of that happening, just looking away from the road for a second, which most of us have done at some point, look away for a second. And then especially if you're like in this heated argument, you're just angry and you're not really thinking about what's happening. And that's an extremely startling aspect to the story, that, hitting the kid and then having to go back and realize what you've done.
Yeah, yeah, but that's a terrifying scenario. But it's kind of funny how the relief kind of comes when you see that. Oh, the kid was killed before he was tossed in front of my car. Right?
Like, I didn't do.
I didn't kill him. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
God. Also, the theme of this story, though, I think is against obviously religion, organized religion, and the power that religion has over people. But those radio sermons that they play are quite terrifying. But the funny thing about that is they're not real sermons, but they're they sound like real sermons, because if you've ever heard people like that talking on the radio or the TV, they go on exactly like that. It was
Yeah.
only tailored for what's going on in this story, but if it's still realistic.
Yes. Very realistic. Like, I am an atheist now, but I did grow up in fundamentalist evangelical Christianity, fire and brimstone. So I heard a lot of those sermons and underwent indoctrination that I had to undo over the course of years. And there's one line in the book where Vicky talks about her experience, because Bert didn't grow up in religion and she did. And he talks about how it sounds like a teenager on the radio, and she's talking about how they want to grab the kids while they're young, while their minds are still malleable and they can mold the kids. And she was also talking about cases where kids, even little kids, would go around and preach and sing and do all this stuff because they had been indoctrinated with this fear. And that felt like the scariest part of the story to me in a lot of ways, because of that realistic element.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen some pretty creepy things myself. Growing up in a religious household, and not necessarily in the household itself, just with the people of churches that I
Mm-hmm.
visited and whatnot. There's some like it's funny if you go to one denomination and talk to people, but you're from another denomination, you'll sometimes find yourself in an argument where
Mm-hmm.
people will say your Jesus isn't the real, your Jesus is Satan. Okay, my Jesus is the real Satan or
Right.
real Jesus, and it's ridiculous.
It is.
All right, so the concept behind the children in Gatlin and their culture, I found that very fascinating. It reminds me of something else though, because and I'm thinking, of course, of they kill whoever's 18 or older, or is it 19? I can't remember, but
19 at first, and they at the end, remember, they bump it down to never mind if you're 18 or older.
yeah. So this reminds me of something else, but I can't find what it is. The only thing I can find is maybe Logan's Run with a dash of Lord of Flies. Maybe I don't know. What do you think? Because I remember talking about this in school with people, but it wasn't Children of the Corn we were talking about. It was something else. Had to have been Logan's Run, I think. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't think I haven't read that. I, of course, read Lord of the Flies, but I can see that idea where they're vying in Lord of the Flies for the basically being lord or ruler over everybody else and hitting people with that conch shell and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird, but it's an interesting concept, though. And of course, religion is behind all this. Jesus is talking to certain people's ears, like Malachi. Uh,
Yep.
um, what do you make of the Children's Christian Front, especially considering it's hiding a very deep evil beneath it all, uh, uh, and especially considering today's world? How do you think this? It's like King was telling us something back in the 70s that's shined a very bright light is being shined upon now that is you can't avoid seeing.
Yes, I think even though I am an atheist, my husband is a follower of Jesus. And I have friends who are, but they do not hold to what certain people are putting out there right now falsely
Yeah.
in the United States about who and what is a Christian. So I think the weaponization of religion is the danger. And that's what these kids do. They weaponize the Bible. They really don't talk about Jesus, right? They take him out of it and it becomes as he who walks behind the rows.
Mm-hmm.
So they change what used to be a church that was a Christian church into what they want it to be. And then they use fear and actual sacrifice to force everybody else to believe what they believe. So I think it really, King is speaking about the dangers between actually following the teachings of Jesus versus taking bits and parts out of the Bible, because there is that mention in the book where these kids actually did take out a lot of the actual Bible and mostly focus on the Old Testament. So that's to me pretty on the nose about people who choose bits and parts of the Bible, and instead of thinking of their own personal relationship with Jesus and using that to make the world a better place, they instead pick what they want to actually try to weaponize it and turn it into a tool to harm others. So I
Yeah.
think there's a difference between the two, because I definitely don't categorize people into one group, people who follow Jesus versus, I'll just say, MAGA cultists,
Mm-hmm.
two very different things, and to me, totally opposite things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like Christian nationalism as
Mm-hmm.
it's I guess that's the biggest Baptist type of religions. They're the most extreme, and I think this story is sort of mocking. Well, yeah, mocking, I guess, is a good word. That type of thing is showing it for what it is. It's with in an exaggerated form, but it's very real nonetheless, because this type of stuff has always been happening, but now they're not hiding it anymore. They're sort of free in a sense. They
Yeah,
freed themselves to show their hatred,
yeah.
and that's sort of what's going on in this town. And I found that an interesting correlation. It's almost as though
Mhm.
Stephen King is a bit of a prophet.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. The ending is different. Like in both, like I said, the movie and the short story, you don't see exactly what it is. You don't see what is it the man who walks among the rows or
Right.
something like that
Yeah.
behind the rows.
Yeah.
You don't see that, um, but the presence is there. You see some evidence in the movie, like with the ground rippling, like I mentioned. It suggests there's something buried deep beneath the earth that's coming, but you never actually see it. But in the story itself, though, it's very ambiguous. But you get the impression it's real. Did you feel it was real?
I did. Like, I felt this presence, whether it was an actual supernatural presence or something that was strong enough with all the kids believing in it that they manifested it and made it real. I think it's a little bit ambiguous as to whether it's actually there or it's just what these kids have created. And also thinking about terms of folk horror too, I think the way it's connected to corn and harvesting, because used to there were these sacrifices that were made to harvest gods, this belief that you had to sacrifice someone in order to appease the gods of the harvest so that you could have that crop. So I don't know if it was an actual entity. Part of me thinks yes, there was an actual he who walks behind the rose, and then the other part thinks it's just a manifestation of these kids' belief and what they've been indoctrinated with. So I think we could talk about it either way.
Yeah, yeah. I think honestly, I think it was real too, because it just the fact that he starts to believe it himself at the very end
Mm-hmm.
is, I think, the biggest indicator that there's something there. And that's what I appreciate. Obviously, you're happy to see him, Bert, in this terrible situation at the end because he's a bit of he's not definitely not the worst of Stephen King's characters,
Right.
but I think in a small way he is trying, but he's failing miserably. Uh, but he wants, like, I guess the desire is there to fix his marriage with Vicky, but he, like I said, he doesn't know how to do it. He's not very good at it, but it's still satisfying to see, the bad thing. And I was kind of disappointed that Vicky gets it so soon. Like once they enter that town, they explore a little bit, trying to find someone, and then she's taken. And when he finds her again, it didn't turn out well for her at all.
Yes. One of the scariest parts to me is when she's in the car. I mean, it's already scary that the
Mm,
children are starting to approach with their makeshift weapons, but when they're all like beating on the windows and clamoring to get in, this big
yeah,
group of kids, that part, it still gives me chills. That imagery is so scary
it
to
is.
me.
And the one detail when they start prying her out of the car, she's like gripping onto the steering wheel.
Yes.
That was like, oh my god, because you can just picture it. I mean, we've seen shit like this happen recently,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and so it hits home harder now because you just know, like Stephen King was tapping into something
Yes.
about fear and not wanting to be taken by this other, whatever they are, right? This mob,
Right.
and it's terrifying.
It
You're
is.
overwhelmed and you're terrified. All right. So, what are some of the symbolisms or deeper meanings within Children of the Corn that we may have missed? Did we catch everything?
I think most things, and then the aspect, of the folk horror, you have the people, the couple leaving the city and going into the rural area, which is like one of the hallmarks in folk horror. You leave the area, the city, the more so-called civilized city, and you enter into this rural area where the rules are not the same. And then I was also thinking about like stories in Greek mythology where you had sacrifices, even though supposedly the Greeks didn't sacrifice humans, but they do have stories of like Hyacinthus who accidentally died by being hit with a shot put from one of the gods. But then some people think that was just a nice way of trying to talk about the way that a youth or a young person died, when in reality there were some human sacrifices for harvest reasons. So I just think about the kind of mythological and folklore aspects, and the way that you have the elements of sacrifice in order to appease the he who walks behind the rose.
Hmm. Yeah. Overall, I really enjoy this story. I like the short story better than the movie. What are your final thoughts on this story?
I like the short story too. I would give this short story 5 stars, rating it, and it's extremely creepy imagery to think about corn husks sticking out of somebody's eyes. That anything with
Yeah.
eyes gets under my skin. So that image, and of course, because now that what even the first time I read it, I'd already seen the movie. I still picture Linda Hamilton as
Hmm.
being the one with these corn husk out of her eyes, hanging up
Yeah.
on this pole, and it's creepy.
Yeah. And you know what else is creepy? Cornfields themselves. Once they're grown tall, 'cause you can get lost in them.
Yes.
And I think people have died that way, getting lost in a cornfield.
Yeah.
I might be wrong on that. I don't know, but I know that people have certainly got lost in there for days, and yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
It's a great setting for a story like this,
Around me
because
at Halloween, there's a place that does do a haunted corn maze. So,
oh yeah, I've been to those too.
yeah,
They're awesome, but also kind of terrifying because you can't see beyond the
right.
walls of corn, and
You're waiting to hear the laughter of children.
yeah, yeah, that would be terrifying. All right. Well, thank you, Jen. I had a great time. Is there anything else you're working on that you'd like to plug before we go?
Just if you would love to join a book club, I would love to have you join the Literary Love Book Club on my YouTube channel and Discord. You can find out more information. And I do have a poetry series that I've recently started on my YouTube channel titled For People Who Don't Like Poetry. So if you want to dip your toe into poetry, then check that out.
Excellent. Well, thanks. And we'll be talking to you again shortly.
Thank you, Jason.